Maya Rodriguez checked her bank balance for the third time that morning, hoping the numbers would somehow change. They didn't. After paying rent, utilities, and her student loan payment, she had exactly $10.37 to last until Friday's paycheck. The 37 cents wouldn't buy much, but the $10 bill in her wallet represented her entire safety net for the next 4 days. At 25, Maya had become an expert at stretching every dollar. She worked full-time at Sunrise Café, a small neighborhood coffee shop in Seattle's Capitol Hill district, while taking online nursing courses whenever she could afford the tuition. Her dream of becoming a registered nurse felt both tantalizingly close and impossibly far away, depending on her financial situation each month. The cafe had been her sanctuary for 3 years. Mrs. Chen, the elderly owner, had hired Maya when she was desperate for work and had never questioned her lack of restaurant experience. The job paid minimum wage plus tips, which varied wildly depending on the season and the mood of their regular customers. But Maya loved the work. The early morning routine, the familiar faces, the sense of community that the small cafe fostered. Her apartment was a studio in a building that had seen better decades, but it was hers. The rent had just been increased by $50 a month, which might not sound like much to most people, but for Maya, it represented the difference between eating lunch and going hungry. She had already cut every possible expense from her budget. As Maya walked to work through the drizzling Seattle rain, she mentally calculated her expenses. For bus fare to and from work would cost $8. That left her with $2.37 for food until Friday. She had some instant ramen at home and a few tea bags, so she could probably make it work. The morning shift at Sunrise Café started at 6 a.m., and Maya always arrived 15 minutes early to help with opening preparations. She loved the quiet moments before the morning rush, when she could organize the pastry display and prepare the coffee machines while watching the city wake up through the cafe's large front windows. Today felt different somehow, though Maya couldn't pinpoint why. There was an energy in the air that seemed to promise change, though she had no idea how dramatically her life was about to shift. Chapter 2. The Stranger Outside. As Maya approached Sunrise Café, she noticed a figure huddled against the building next door. The man was clearly homeless. His clothes were torn and dirty, his hair unkempt, and he was soaking wet from the persistent Seattle drizzle. But something about him caught Maya's attention. Despite his obvious circumstances, there was something in his posture that suggested dignity, as if he was trying to maintain some sense of pride even in his lowest moment. Maya had seen homeless individuals around the neighborhood before, and she always tried to help when she could. Sometimes it was a free coffee or a day-old pastry that Mrs. Chen let her give away. But today, with her own financial situation so precarious, Maya hesitated. The man looked up as she passed, and their eyes met briefly. He was younger than she had initially thought, probably in his early 30s, with intelligent eyes that seemed incongruous with his current situation. There was something familiar about him, though Maya was certain they had never met. "Excuse me," he said quietly, his voice hoarse but polite. "I'm sorry to bother you, but do you have any spare change? I haven't eaten in 2 days." Maya stopped, her hand instinctively going to the $10 bill in her pocket. This was her last money until Friday. This was her bus fare, her emergency fund, her security blanket. But looking at this man, really looking at him, she saw desperation mixed with embarrassment, the expression of someone who had never expected to find himself in this position. "I don't have much," Maya said, pulling out the crumpled bill. "But please, get yourself something warm to eat." The man stared at the $10 as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. "I can't take this. You work here, right? You probably need this money." "Everyone needs help sometimes," Maya replied, pressing the bill into his hand. "There's a diner 2 blocks down that opens early. They have good breakfast specials." The gratitude in the man's eyes was overwhelming. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me." Maya smiled and continued toward the cafe, not looking back. She didn't see the man watch her enter the building, or notice how carefully he folded the $10 bill before putting it in his pocket. She had no way of knowing that this simple act of kindness would change both their lives in ways she could never have imagined. As she unlocked the cafe door and began her opening routine, Maya tried not to think about how she would get home from work that evening without bus fare. Chapter 3. A Day of Struggles. The morning rush at Sunrise Café was particularly busy, which meant good tips, but also meant Maya was constantly on her feet, serving coffee and pastries to Seattle's caffeine-dependent workforce. Regular customers greeted her with familiar warmth. She knew most of their orders by heart and always had a smile ready, even when her own day was challenging. Mrs. Chen worked alongside Maya, moving with the efficiency of someone who had been running the cafe for over 20 years. At 72, she was still sharp and energetic, but Maya had noticed her moving more slowly lately, and there had been whispered phone conversations about doctor's appointments and test results. "Maya, dear," Mrs. Chen said during a brief lull between customers. I need to talk to you about something important, but not here. Not now. Can you stay a few minutes after closing today? Maya nodded, though she wondered how she would get home without bus fare. Maybe she could walk. It would take over an hour, but it was possible. Of course, Mrs. Chen. Is everything okay? Everything will be fine, the older woman replied. But Maya caught a note of sadness in her voice that made her worry. The lunch crowd was smaller than usual, which meant fewer tips. Maya counted her earnings during her break and realized she had made only $12 in tips all day. Combined with her hourly wage, it would be enough to cover her immediate needs, but barely. As she worked, Maya found herself thinking about the homeless man from that morning. She hoped he had been able to get a good meal with the $10 she had given him. The memory of his grateful expression made her feel warm despite her own financial worries. Around 3 o'clock, a well-dressed woman entered the cafe and spent several minutes looking around, taking notes on a small tablet. She ordered a simple coffee, but seemed more interested in observing the space than drinking it. Maya noticed her paying particular attention to the layout, the equipment, and the customer flow. Excuse me, the woman said as Maya refilled her coffee. How long have you worked here? 3 years, Maya replied. Are you thinking of opening a cafe? The woman smiled mysteriously. Something like that. You seem to really care about this place. I do. It's been like a second home to me. The woman nodded and made another note on her tablet before leaving a generous $5 tip and departing without another. Maya found the interaction odd, but didn't think much more about it as the afternoon. By closing time, Maya was exhausted, but satisfied with the day's work. She had managed to earn enough to cover her immediate needs, though the walk home would be long and tiring. Chapter 4. Mrs. Chen's Secret. After the last customer left and Maya had finished cleaning the espresso machine, Mrs. Chen locked the front door and turned the sign to closed. The cafe felt different in the quiet evening light, more intimate and somehow more fragile. Sit down, dear, Mrs. Chen said, gesturing to one of the small tables by the window. I have something important to tell you. Maya sat down, her stomach knotting with anxiety. Mrs. Chen's serious expression suggested this wasn't going to be good news. I've been going to the doctor lately, Mrs. Chen began, her hands folded carefully in her lap. My heart isn't as strong as it used to be, and my doctor says I need to retire. I can't keep working these long hours and Maya felt her world tilting. What does that mean for the cafe? I've sold it, Mrs. Chen said quietly. The new owner takes over next week. I'm sorry, Maya. I know this is sudden, but I didn't have a choice. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. This cafe wasn't just her job. It was her stability, her community, her path toward achieving her dreams. What about the staff? What about me? The new owner says he plans to keep everyone on, at least initially, but I can't make any promises about what changes he might. Mrs. Chen reached across the table and took Maya's hand. You're a wonderful employee and a good person. Any owner would be lucky to have you. Maya tried to process this information. Change was always scary, but maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Maybe the new owner would be as kind and understanding as Mrs. Chen had. Do you know anything about the new owner? Maya asked. Not much. His name is Daniel Park. He's some kind of businessman who apparently wants to get into the restaurant industry. The real estate agent said he paid cash for the business, so he must be doing well for himself. Maya nodded, trying to stay optimistic. When will I meet him? Tomorrow morning. He's coming in early to look around and meet the staff. Mrs. Chen squeezed Maya's hand. I've told him wonderful things about you. I'm sure everything out fine. As Maya finally left the cafe that evening, she began the long walk home through the Seattle streets. The drizzle had stopped, but the air was cold and damp. She thought about the homeless man from that morning, wondering where he was spending the night, hoping he had found somewhere warm and safe. She had no idea that the man she had helped was at that very moment sitting in a luxury hotel room, preparing for his first day as the owner of Sunrise Café, and thinking about the kind waitress who had given him her last $10 when he needed it most. Chapter 5. The new owner arrives. Maya arrived at work the next morning with a mixture of nervousness and curiosity about meeting the new owner. She had spent the evening researching Daniel Park online but had found surprisingly little information. Just a few mentions in business journals about successful tech investments, and a brief article about a company acquisition that had gone wrong. Mrs. Chen was already at the cafe when Maya arrived, looking more anxious than Maya had ever seen her. He should be here any minute, she said, checking her watch for the third time. I want everything to be perfect. The morning prep routine felt different knowing that someone new would soon be evaluating everything they did. Maya arranged the pastry display with extra care and made sure the coffee machines were spotless. Whatever happened, she wanted to make a good first impression. At exactly 8 o'clock, a black sedan pulled up outside the cafe. Maya watched through the window as a man in an expensive suit stepped out, straightening his tie and looking up at the cafe's modest storefront with an expression she couldn't quite read. When he pushed through the front door, Maya felt the world stop. It was him, the homeless man from yesterday morning, the man she had given her last $10 to. But he looked completely different, clean-shaven, professionally dressed, carrying himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to success. Maya stared in shock, her mind struggling to reconcile the desperate man from yesterday with the polished businessman standing before her. He looked directly at her, and she saw recognition flash in his eyes, followed by something that looked like embarrassment. "Mr. Park," Mrs. Chen said, stepping forward with a nervous smile. "Welcome to Sunrise Café. Let me introduce you to Maya, our best waitress." Daniel Park, because it was definitely, despite the transformation, extended his hand toward Maya. "It's nice to meet you, Maya." Maya shook his hand automatically, still too stunned to speak. His grip was firm and warm, and she noticed that his hands were clean and manicured, with no trace of the dirt and desperation she had seen yesterday. "Maya has been with us for 3 years, Mrs. Chen continued, oblivious to the tension crackling between Maya and Daniel. "She knows all our regular customers and has wonderful ideas for improving service." "I'm sure she does," Daniel said, his eyes never leaving Maya's face. "Mrs. Chen, would it be possible for me to speak with Maya privately for a few minutes?" Mrs. Chen looked surprised but nodded. "Of course. I'll be in the back office if you need anything." As soon as they were alone, the cafe fell into an uncomfortable silence. Maya finally found her voice. "You're Daniel Park, the new owner?" "I am," he said quietly. "And you're the woman who saved my life yesterday morning." Chapter 6. The Truth Revealed. Daniel gestured toward one of the small tables, and Maya sat down across from him, her mind reeling with questions. Up close, she could see that this was definitely the same man she had helped yesterday, but the transformation was so complete that it seemed almost impossible. "I owe you an explanation," Daniel said, his voice quiet but steady. "Yesterday morning you saw me at what was probably the lowest point of my life. I had been living on the streets for 6 months. Maya stared at him in disbelief. "But you're a businessman. You bought this cafe." "I was a businessman," Daniel corrected. "6 months ago, I lost everything. My business partner embezzled funds from our company and disappeared, leaving me to face the creditors and the lawsuits. I lost my business, my home, my savings, everything." The pain in his voice was evident, and Maya could see that despite his current polished appearance, the memory of those months was still raw. "I had been living in shelters and on the streets, trying to figure out how to rebuild my life. Yesterday morning was particularly bad. I hadn't eaten in 2 days, and I was starting to lose hope that things would ever get better." Maya remembered the desperation she had seen in his eyes, the way he had hesitated before asking for help. "Then you gave me $10, Daniel continued. "Your last $10, as I found out later. You had no idea who I was, or whether I deserved help, but you gave it anyway." "How do you know it was my last $10? Daniel smiled sadly. "Because I watched you walk home that evening. I followed you to make sure you got home safely, and I saw you walking instead of taking the bus. I realized you had given me your bus fare." Maya felt heat rise in her cheeks. "You followed me? I was worried about you. A woman who would give her last money to a stranger. I wanted to make sure you were safe." Daniel leaned forward. "That night, I used your $10 to buy a meal, and while I was eating, I made some phone calls. I still had a few contacts in the business world, people who owed me favors. And I managed to recover some assets that I thought were lost forever. It wasn't everything, but it was enough to start over." Daniel's expression became more intense. "Maya, your kindness didn't just buy me a meal. It gave me hope when I had none left. It reminded me that there were still good people in the world." Maya felt overwhelmed by the revelation. "So, you bought the cafe because of me?" "I bought the cafe because I wanted to do something meaningful with my second chance. When I learned that this place was for sale, and that you worked here, it felt like fate." The front door chimed as the first customers of the day began to arrive. Maya glanced toward the door, then back at Daniel. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Daniel said, standing up, "we run a cafe together. If you're willing to stay, that is." Chapter 7. A New Partnership. Over the following weeks, Maya watched Daniel transform Sunrise Café with the same intensity he had once brought to his tech business. But unlike the stereotypical corporate takeover she had feared, Daniel's changes were thoughtful and collaborative. He spent hours talking with each employee about their ideas for improvement, and he seemed genuinely interested in maintaining the cafe's community atmosphere. Maya found herself working closely with Daniel on various projects. He had asked her to help redesign the menu, upgrade the point-of-sale system, and develop a customer loyalty. Her 3 years of experience at the cafe, combined with her natural understanding of customer service, made her invaluable to his vision. "What do you think about adding a small lunch menu?" Daniel asked one afternoon as they reviewed sales figures together. "Nothing complicated, just sandwiches and salads that we could prepare quickly." Maya considered Our regular customers have been asking for lunch options for years. Mrs. Chen always said the kitchen was too small, but with the new equipment you installed it might work. Daniel made a note on his tablet. Would you be interested in managing the lunch program? It would mean a promotion and a significant raise. Maya looked at him in surprise. You want me to be a manager? I want you to be my partner, Daniel said. Not in ownership, at least not yet, but in running this place. You understand the customers and the community in ways that I'm still learning. The offer was tempting, but Maya hesitated. Daniel, I appreciate everything you're doing, but I need to ask, is this because of what happened that morning? Are you offering me opportunities because you feel guilty? Daniel set down his tablet and looked directly at her. Maya, that morning you showed me who you really are. Someone who helps others even when it costs you something. That's exactly the kind of person I want as a partner. This has nothing to do with guilt and everything to do with recognizing talent and character. Maya felt a warmth spread through her chest. In that case, yes, I'd love to help you develop the lunch program. As they continued working together, Maya began to see different sides of Daniel. He was driven and ambitious, but he was also thoughtful and surprisingly humble. He often asked for her opinion on decisions, and he genuinely listened to her suggestions. The cafe's regular customers had initially been skeptical about the new ownership, but Daniel won them over by learning their names and their usual orders. He also implemented several popular changes, including free Wi-Fi, extended hours, and a small selection of books that customers could borrow. Maya found herself looking forward to work in ways she hadn't before. The job was more challenging now, but it was also more rewarding. She was learning about business management, menu development, and customer relations, skills that would serve her well regardless of what the future held. One evening, as they were closing up together, Daniel turned to Maya with a serious expression. There's something else I want to discuss with you. Chapter 8. An Unexpected Offer. Maya finished wiping down the last table and turned to face Daniel, curious about his serious tone. Over the past month, she had grown comfortable working with him, but she could still sense when he had something important on his mind. I've been thinking about your nursing studies, Daniel said, leaning against the counter. Mrs. Chen mentioned that you've been taking classes online when you can afford them. Maya felt a familiar pang of frustration. I had to put them on hold again this semester. Between the rent increase and other expenses, I couldn't manage the tuition. What if I told you that Sunrise Café could pay for your education? Maya stared at him. What do you mean? I mean a full scholarship program for employees who want to continue their education. You could finish your nursing degree while working and we'd cover all the costs. Tuition, books, everything. The offer was so unexpected that Maya had trouble processing it. Daniel, that's incredibly generous, but why would you do that? Because investing in our employees is investing in our future. And because you deserve the chance to achieve your dreams. Daniel's expression became more personal. Maya, you gave me hope when I had lost everything. Let me give you the opportunity to pursue what you've always wanted. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes. The nursing program had been her dream for so long, but it had always seemed just out of reach financially. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Say you'll let me help you the way you helped me. But what about the cafe? If I'm in school, I won't be able to work as many hours. We'll figure it out. Maybe you could work part-time and focus on your studies. Or maybe you could help us develop a health and wellness program for the cafe. Combine your nursing knowledge with our business. Maya wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. You really think I could do both? I think you can do anything you set your mind to, Daniel said firmly. You're one of the strongest, most capable people I've ever met. The sincerity in his voice made Maya's heart skip a beat. Over the past month, she had begun to see Daniel not just as her employer, but as someone she genuinely cared about. His transformation from the desperate man on the street to the thoughtful business owner had been remarkable. But what impressed her most was how he had never forgotten where he came from. There's one condition, Maya said, trying to lighten the emotional moment. Name it. If I become a nurse, I want to volunteer at the free clinic downtown 1 day a week. And I want Sunrise Café to sponsor a monthly health screening event for the community. Daniel smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. I think that's a perfect way to give back. As they finished closing the cafe together, Maya felt a sense of possibility that she hadn't experienced in years. Her dreams were finally within reach, and it was all because she had chosen to help a stranger on a rainy morning. Chapter 9. Growing Closer. 3 months into the new arrangement, Sunrise Café had become more successful than ever. The lunch program Maya had developed was popular with the neighborhood's working professionals, and the evening study hours, where students could get discounted coffee and quiet workspace, had created a new revenue stream. Maya was thriving in her dual role as cafe manager and nursing student. The online classes were challenging, but having the financial pressure removed allowed her to focus on learning rather than worrying about money. Daniel had been true to his word, covering all her educational expenses and adjusting her work schedule to accommodate her studies. Working so closely together had deepened their friendship in unexpected ways. Maya had learned that Daniel was more complex than his polished exterior suggested. He was driven by a genuine desire to help others, partly because of his own experience with loss and hardship. "I never thanked you properly," Maya said one evening as they reviewed the day's receipts together. "For what?" "For believing in me, for giving me this opportunity." Maya gestured around the cafe, which had been transformed into a warm, welcoming space that felt both professional and homey. "Maya, you've earned everything you've achieved. I just provided the resources. You did all the hard work." Their eyes met across the small table, and Maya felt something shift between them. The professional relationship they had maintained was evolving into something deeper, though neither of them had acknowledged it directly. "Can I ask you something personal?" Maya said. Daniel nodded. "Do you ever regret what happened? Losing your first business, I mean. Going through all that hardship?" Daniel considered the question carefully. 6 months ago, I would have said yes without hesitation, but now, I think everything happened for a reason. If I hadn't lost everything, I never would have been on that street corner. I never would have met you. The admission hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that neither was quite ready to address directly. "I should probably get home," Maya said, suddenly feeling the need for some distance to process her emotions. "Let me drive you," Daniel offered. "It's late, and it's starting to rain again." During the short drive to Maya's apartment, they sat in comfortable silence. When Daniel pulled up outside her building, Maya hesitated before getting out of the car. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I want you to know that helping you that morning wasn't just about the money. There was something about you. Even when you were at your lowest point, I could see that you were a good person." "How could you tell?" Maya smiled. "The way you asked for help. You were embarrassed but not entitled, desperate but still polite. And when I gave you the money, you tried to refuse it because you were worried about." Daniel reached over and gently touched her hand. "You saved my life, Maya, in more ways than one." As Maya walked up to her apartment that night, she realized that her feelings for Daniel had grown far beyond gratitude or professional respect. But she also knew that their situation was complicated. He was her boss, and their relationship had begun under extraordinary circumstances. Chapter 10. Full Circle. 6 months after Daniel had taken over Sunrise Café, Maya was preparing for her final nursing school exams. The cafe had become a cornerstone of the community, known not just for excellent coffee, but for its commitment to supporting local causes and providing opportunities for its employees. Maya had completed her clinical rotations at the free clinic downtown, where she had discovered a passion for community health. Her plan was to work part-time as a nurse while continuing to help Daniel expand the cafe's community outreach programs. On a rainy Tuesday morning, exactly 1 year after their first encounter, Maya was surprised to see Daniel standing outside the cafe before opening, holding 2 cups of coffee. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, unlocking the front door. "I wanted to recreate something," Daniel said, offering her one of the cups. "1 year ago today, you gave me coffee when I needed it most. Today, I wanted to return the favor." Maya accepted the cup, touched by the gesture. "You've returned the favor 100 times over, Actually, I don't think I have," Daniel said, his expression becoming serious. "You gave me more than coffee that morning. You gave me hope, purpose, and eventually, love." Maya's heart stopped. "Daniel, I know this is complicated. I know I'm your boss, and that our relationship started under unusual circumstances. But Maya, I've fallen in love with you, not because of what you did for me that morning, but because of who you are every day. Kind, intelligent, strong, compassionate." Maya set down her coffee, her hands trembling slightly. "I've been feeling the same way, but I wasn't sure if it was appropriate to say anything." "What if we made it appropriate?" asked. "What if I offered you a real partnership in the cafe? Equal ownership, equal decision-making. We could be partners in business and in life." Maya looked around the cafe they had built together. The warm lighting, the community bulletin board, the corner where nursing students often studied, the small stage where local musicians performed on weekends. This place had become more than a business. It was a symbol of what could happen when people believed in each other. "Are you proposing a business merger or something more personal?" Maya asked with a smile. Daniel laughed and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Actually, I was hoping for both." As he dropped to one knee in the cafe where their lives had intersected so dramatically, Maya realized that sometimes the most beautiful love stories began with the simplest acts of. The $10 she had given to a stranger had come back to her multiplied beyond anything she could have imagined, not just in financial terms, but in love, opportunity, and the knowledge that compassion always finds a way to complete its circle. "Yes," she said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes to all of it." Outside, the Seattle rain continued to fall, but inside Sunrise Café, 2 people who had found each other in the most unexpected circumstances were beginning the next chapter of their story together.